We're going to start recording just so we're ready to go on that. Okay, Zach's presenting. We're going to take that back from Zach. Perfect. Good stuff. Perfect. We got about another minute going. Here's Gary Johnson joining us. Mr. Johnson, so good to see you, sir. On mute. Charles Becker. You guys are all having a really bad influence on me. I got Becca that got me into an orange shirt. Gary's wearing his glasses, so I got to wear my glasses and actually see.
You know, it is Melody's fault. She told me there was a dress code.
Nice. Good stuff. All right, so the other thing that we're going to say is that if you look up towards the upper right-hand side of your screen, this is for everybody but the presenters, so Anita, Becca, Kevin, there's a chat box. You can see that it looks kind of like an icon that's up. It should have a green area. If you click on that, that'll open up a chat box so that you can interact with any of the presenters. Gary Johnson is going to be working through the chat box across, as well as Daniel Miranda working through the chat box. You could really help me, though, if you're just joining. We've got Kyle Callister joining right now, so really well attended. You can always scroll right down the middle of your screen, hover that icon that's out, and then click on the microphone button. That will mute you. You know that you're muted if it's in red. We love having you on, Ernie, and everybody else that's out. We just want to try to minimize the background noise that's out there. It's 6:01. We're going to wait until it's 6:02, and then we're going to officially start and make sure things are going on. The positive news is we are recording this for anybody that's joining us after the fact. We'll make sure that it's out there. Here's Susan Mully joining us as well. Excellent. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off and started. And again, if you could make sure that you're muted, we just want to have the presenters up with their screens going and have those microphones going. But the more you guys can mute, the better this will be. The chat box is always a great way to interact. We've got myself, Daniel Miranda, and Gary Johnson working as a producer on the background to help with the questions and bring those out so that we can talk to you. But it's going to be a great night tonight. This is the first time we've had 3 different people on a call with us. We've got Anita Weiss, we have Kevin Billy, and we have Rebecca. And I think Becca doesn't need any introduction. Everybody knows Becca. So, you know, we're going to go through tonight. We're going to talk. The whole focus is going to be to talk about the NA test. And we've got 3 great breeders. We also have 3 really amazing handlers that are out there. Anita was one of the first people that I saw out in the field working with SoCal. If it's any given day, you'll probably find Becca out at Prado. And then on the other side of the camera lens, but also at the other end of the leash, is Kevin Billy, all out training. And all of these are very accomplished handlers from the NA side. So with that said, I'm going to let Daniel kind of chime in here. He's our co-host working with these 3 panelists. And Daniel, if you want to start us off and just start the conversation going as we talk about talk and natural ability.
So tonight we were going to talk about more NA, or natural abilities, we call it, kind of our panels ask him the way they approach it. Anita Weiss, pleasure to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. Mr. Billy, Miss Becca. Kind of want to just a little quick 1 second, Anita, if you just want to give your background on your NA dogs and what you do, what your kind of philosophy approach is. And then Kevin, if you want to follow her, and then Becca, if you want to finish and clean up. Just kind of.
Am I on again? Yeah. Okay, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry about that. I don't know if you could hear me when I was talking. I was
Yeah, I
wondering
did.
if you could kind of just start off and tell us how you approach it first with your first puppy. Like, what do you do?
Oh, when I get a new puppy, or when we
Yeah.
started in the beginning, or
Yeah, kind of when you first get that puppy, then the steps you start with getting them ready for a natural ability testing.
Right, right. I start pretty young with a puppy, maybe 8 weeks old. Teaching them a very young age what low is at the food dish, at the door, very gently and very slowly, but very consistently working with the puppy at that age. I find a lot of people are afraid to work with puppies at a very young age. They think that they can't handle the training. And it's really exposure for me, for this puppy. A lot of food motivation, stuff like that. I had some notes here. It's teaching a puppy to sit at a young age is not going to hurt the dog. It's very good. All this stuff that you're going to do with these puppies, and a lot of it, little bits here and there, that puppy's going to bond with you, and it's going to work with you in the field. It's going to want to be with you. Okay. You wait till the pup's 4 to 6 months old before you do any training with it. It's already learned kind of bad habits, of wanting to do its own thing. It needs direction. Okay. And just from there on, I just work my way up. I do start puppies in the field around 12 weeks old, simply because I want to make sure they have enough vaccines in them in a safe area. I'll introduce them to water. Birds, introducing birds to puppies. I play around with the bird's wing, but not too much of the getting them to point stuff. We know these puppies are going to point. Just give them a little bit of exposure. And then eventually I'll go to, and I'm starting a puppy at 7 days old on a bird wing, and then a dead bird, and then a live bird with the wings taped so it isn't flapping around in its face and stuff. Just building up that desire, and then what I want to see is when I take that bird wing away from that puppy, or that bird away from that puppy, what is that pup going to do? Now it's built up all this desire, and now it's going to take off and start looking. Where did it go? And that's what I'm looking for in a puppy. I'm looking for that drive, that desire. Okay. Sometimes you'll see a puppy that's like, oh, well, it's gone. They're going to run off and go do their own thing. So water, and two, I'll introduce puppy to little kiddie pools in the backyard. And then again, at 12 weeks, I'll take them to a really shallow pond. So starting, between 8 and 12 weeks is a good time for just about everything, and do it at a young age. A little bit of obedience. Teach them to kennel, to woe with the food dish, woe with the door, so they don't go barging out the door. Teach them to go into a kennel. When they're on the tailgate of the truck, they know to go in there. I might throw a little food in to entice them. So all this stuff, put all this stuff together, and I don't know what else to tell you. That's where I start with very dog.
So what could you go a little more in depth in your approach on the water? Because I know sometimes that's the biggest aspect for people with pups.
Right.
You mentioned kiddie pool, so can you walk me through those steps?
Oh, just a little kiddie pool in the backyard. Sometimes I'll even take like the kiddie pools tend to have a little bit of a high edge on a puppy. 12 weeks. So what I'll do is I'll take a maybe a 500 crate and just put it in the yard, put water in the bottom of it. Yeah, when I lived in Arizona, it's pretty hot and puppies want to be in the water, but if they're winter puppies, then you're going to have to wait on the water stuff. But a little bit of stuff like that can help make it easy for the dog, so it's not intimidating. Okay. Last thing you want to see is a puppy that's got his tail down and scared to death of everything. So that's why you start really young with all the work for these pups.
It's a great approach. Really, really great approach.
Yes.
Anita. Let me take it over to Kevin just for a quick sec. Kevin, why don't you talk to us just a little bit about the background that you've got, the kennel, that you're working with, and how long you've been working with dogs. And then if you could follow up with that, I just want to try to build a quick narrative. What brought you? I know this answer, Kevin, but I don't think everybody else does. What brought you to NAVHDA? Who was the first dog?
The first dog that I took to NAVHDA was the dog was Moxie. And Moxie is from a litter that we bred with the help of Susan Mully. And we were looking for a suitable candidate, and we ended up having 6 puppies, and I kept the only bitch of the litter. And I went to NAVHDA because I was struggling with my training and trying to get the trying to get a dog that would work for me, and that I could course it to retrieve, to swim, to point, and be a good all-around dog. So once we had the litter, we're fortunate that 4 of the people that we gave dogs to, they're also in NAVHDA. I brought them into the fold, and we kind of collectively went to our local training grounds, and we worked on the 3 aspects for NA. Before, however, those puppies left the house, what I got them accustomed to were the birds. Like Anita, I trained the dogs just about 1 day a week with birds, just kind of in the backyard. And like what she said, I didn't expose them to areas that may be maybe a little dicey without the vaccination. So I generally didn't take the puppies out into the field until they were about 12 weeks. However, prior to that, what we were doing then to get them acclimated to birds were I had some defrosted chucker and pigeons, and what I would do is just kind of throw them, a couple times on the lawn and get them accustomed to the smell and things like that, and also play games with them and maybe do like a slight drag. I don't have a kiddie pool. However, what I did once we got to the field, and we put them on some live birds, no check cord, anything like that. We were just trying to get the puppies to extend their range and get comfortable with themselves. Absolutely no pressure. I don't worry about the point. I don't do anything like that because I know it will come. If it doesn't come now, it'll come later. So we got them acclimated in the field that way. We were also to entice them, to help them expand. Sometimes we would take a defrosted bird or maybe a wounded bird and then throw it for the puppy to have them to run after it, maybe hopefully pick it up and bring it back.
Yeah. Hey, Kev, I'm going to ask you just a quick question about this. Why don't you tell me just the most difficult thing from the NA test perspective? And Becca, don't get comfortable. Daniel's coming in a quick sec to talk to you. But from the NA test, as somebody that's worked as a breeder, somebody that's worked as a trainer, that's worked with a lot of different dogs, what's the most difficult part for you on the NA test?
It's probably the water.
Okay.
To get a dog acclimated and get comfortable in swimming. What's that?
Why the water?
Just sometimes dogs don't. Some of the puppies didn't always go to water naturally, and maybe they had if they weren't exposed at an early age, sometimes they were a little reluctant to go in and swim.
Okay.
So my philosophy was, I've been told, and I think it works well, is I just bought some waders and I go out into the pond and hopefully entice the dogs to come and join, and do that consistently. Maybe once a week we go out to our training grounds, and that definitely helped.
Good stuff. Daniel, I know that you've got a couple of questions you were going to ask Becca.
I do, Becca. So I know we haven't really touched on it. What's your approach on getting dogs comfortable with the gunfire? One of the aspects I think a lot of people forget, or to get their dog used to it before they do the actual test itself. What's your approach?
Well, as a breeder, we start gun stimulation about the time that their ears open. We start from areas that are farther away and gradually move in closer. And then when we're taking our 8-week-old to 12-week-old puppies out into the field where there is live fire, we don't put them out there when we're shooting. We keep them away so they can hear it from distance, and slowly and gradually move them in. And when they get to the point that after they've run the field and after they're excited about the birds, you let them get out there and run the field, and you shoot a starter pistol from a distance away, and you watch the puppy's reaction. If the puppy gives a negative reaction, you're going to pull back a little bit farther and slowly and very slowly bring them in closer, because the worst thing you could do is ruin your dog to gunfire because that's really hard to bring them back.
So average a couple weeks, a month. How long does that process work go for you?
Well, typically with my puppies, because we're doing all of those things when they're babies, they're pretty used to it by the time we get them to 12 weeks and they're out in the field. Of course, we're not shooting over our puppies with shotguns. I would say that is not happening until maybe their 10th time out in the field, and it's still from like a distance away. Because you're still continuing to monitor their reactions to the gunfire. And again, slowly bringing it in closer. So I would say probably by the time your puppy's 6 to 9 months old, you're bringing your dog to shoot over it, if you've done it correctly.
Right. Pete?
So Anita, hearing perspectives from a couple of different breeders, a couple of different handlers with pups that are out there, I guess my question to you, as we're approaching and talking about, a lot of times we've got a dog, maybe it's a requirement of a breeder, maybe it's a thought that you're having about getting into the NA test, but regardless of what brought you to the field, the big question is, with a new pup, how much training is too much? How much training is too much? What are the clues from a dog that tells you that he's done for the day or that they're done for the week?
Right. Okay. Training usually, what I do is 3 times a day, maybe 10 minutes, 3 times a day. And if I see the puppy is getting a little pressure and the tail's going down and the puppy's cowering or anything like that, I'm going to stop immediately and do something that's fun with that puppy and get it off of what it's, what it's being scared, something's maybe throwing a bumper and there was, a car backfired or something and it scared the pup. Stuff like that can happen, or the neighbor's dog was barking. So then I want to stop. I want to step back, play a little game with the puppy, have fun with it, and then let it have some time on its own to search around and stuff, and then get back to the training thing. But try to make it positive every time. And 2 times a day is okay, but 3, even 4 times a day, 10-minute sessions, and it's all fun stuff. And I'll even throw in the bumper down the hall and letting the puppy go chase it and bring it back to you. Anything like that, anything that's fun. So, but if the tail's down and the puppy's cowering and is trying to run and hide somewhere, that's a signal there's something going on. So you have to stop and step back.
So Anita, I'm going to give you just a follow-up question. We're going to get into the aspects of the NA test in a little bit with Daniel and the next panelist. But I guess the biggest question is, we've got a brand new dog, and in that first year, there's quite a bit that's going on. What's the most important things that you're going to teach a pup in the first year? If you're filling out a plan or an outline for your dogs, what's the most important things that you're going to teach your pup in the first year?
The first year, probably a lot of obedience, fun obedience, because that's the basis for all the training. Yeah.
My wife's trying the same thing. It didn't work well. Lots of
really
in the first year of marriage. No.
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so when you talk about obedience, are you working? I'm sorry. This is why I get into trouble with my wife. I bring too much humor there, and she says I'm not funny, which you're finding out. How much do you use the check cord in training a pup, and what is the check cord helping you do?
Okay, I used to use check cords for everything. On birds, not with a little 8-week-old puppy. I'm not going to do it. A 3-4 month old puppy, I'll sometimes put a check cord on with put a collar around the waist, not an e-collar, just a collar, and hook the check cord to that. I've found with putting a check cord on the dog's neck on a collar, sometimes they can hit the end of that check cord and flip them over backwards. It can be very painful to them, and it's very traumatic for the dog. So it's better around the waist. Yeah, it's I don't really like check cords for bird work. I mean, if you've got bird launchers and you've got pigeons, that's the best way to do it. They're not going to catch those birds. Putting puppies out with the check cord and check cording them in on a bird, and the bird doesn't fly and the puppy jumps on it, you just step back about 10 feet. So
I love hearing you
Yeah.
say the launchers. It's a big point of discussion here. Kevin's going to speak in a second. I heard you say launchers, not tip up, but launchers.
Yeah, and you have to be careful with these launchers too, because with young puppies, it can really scare the heck out of them. So you have to find a good deep cover, hide this thing in with a nice wind. Your wind has to be good. It's the whole situation has to be set up right. I've got a say maybe a 4-month-old puppy. Now I'm going to start popping birds on that dog. Okay, I want to make sure we've got enough wind that pup can smell that bird when it's crossing, and then I'll kind of guide it in with a check cord a little bit, and then I'll drop the cord. And if that puppy don't stop, then the bird's going to go. But it has to be in deep cover so it doesn't see that launcher. It can scare the heck out of them. After a while they get used to it, but you have to be really careful with that. So,
All right.
and it depends on the dog. Every dog's different,
So thank you, Nita. Kevin, so what is your approach for doing the tracking? How do you go about and how do you start it?
To start, before I go out in the field as puppies, I would generally use hot dogs and just drag them through the backyard, and hopefully they would find them and make it a fun game, and do it 3-4 times in a week, but be consistent with it. And then from the hot dogs, I would take maybe one of those defrosted birds and do the same thing in the backyard, and integrate that with the fetching. And then in the field, we bring back just the frozen bird and do a nice straight line, make it easy for the dogs, and then hold a 6-foot cord and try to keep them down on the path and give them lots of praise, and hopefully they zero in on the bird, and they get and then just lengthen the line. But I try to make it easy for them at first so that they can always win, and you get what you want out of the dog.
So your approach is the wind at 90-degree angle, or can you walk me through that for maybe some of the newer handlers?
If I'm running east to west and the wind's blowing from the north to south, it's crossed if we can. Sometimes if the wind's blowing right in their face, that makes it easy for them. But generally, I try to do it at night. Like if I'll run east where the wind is blowing the opposite direction, so it's crossed. So hopefully they can keep their nose down and find what they're looking for.
Okay. Becca, any words, any thoughts? Your approach? Becca, can you hear me? Okay, well, I think she can't hear us. Anita, how about you? What's your approach on doing the tracking?
The tracking, that's pretty much what Kevin was talking about. I don't use food. I don't use hot dogs or cheese balls in the water. I usually just start with a dead bird. And sometimes the pups that don't get the drag, they just don't know what's going on. Like you can take it and drag it out and put the pup's nose down. It doesn't have a clue what's going on. Some of them pick it up real quick. So what we might do is have somebody drag the bird while the puppy's watching and let it just follow through and get to the end. Eventually you're going to drop it, let them pick it up and bring it back. So just kind of guide it in while it's watching that bird be drugged. After a couple times of doing that, seeing a sight drag, they pick up on it real quick.
Okay.
So those kind of things you can do while it doesn't, never been exposed to it.
Becca, you want to chime in? I think you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'll ask you a question, Becca. We talk a little bit. By the way, we're getting some great questions in the chat box. Sorry, we're getting some great questions in the chat box, but I do want to ask you a quick question. Why don't we start with the water side of the NA test? I think for everybody, whether it's NA or UT, this is a really difficult area that's out there. In your experience, can a person sour a dog on the water by introducing it incorrectly? And how do you avoid that? Okay.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing when we're introducing our puppies to any of the aspects with NA, of course, with the exception of the tracking, that we remember to keep it fun. The water for puppies, initially, make it really fun, make it exciting. There's no special form that your puppy needs to have when it's getting into the water initially. You just want them to get in there. You want them to swim. They bring the puppy back, great. It should really be zero pressure. You could really ruin a puppy if you pick them up and throw them in. I've seen it before. Some dogs can handle that. I wouldn't recommend it. And like Kevin said, if it requires you to get on your waders, jump in there with your dog. My experience, I haven't had to do that because we usually start with our recall and retrieving on land. And so we transfer that into the water with our bumpers or whatever items that we're throwing into the water.
Now, I had a quick question for you about water as a whole. One of the things that I didn't know, and I've never run a dog in NA, but actually it was at the test, just the most recent test, we had people that were throwing bumpers, but we also had people throwing live or a dead game out. What's your experience with that? Do you train both ways with game and with bumpers, or just with bumpers?
The only reason we would need to use a bird is if the dog does not have the desire to go in for the inanimate object. So we would use a bird. So to entice them a little bit more, give them a little bit more motivation to go in to the water.
Excellent. Kevin, any thoughts about DNA for water? Becca talked quite a bit passionately on it. One of my favorite areas the past couple of summers is sitting on the beach at Prado, or I'm sorry, not at Prado, but at Rahagis with you. Any thoughts on the water, Kevin?
No, I think both are. I mean, all those are great ideas. I think the dogs that are reluctant to go into the water, though, may need a little help with a live bird that's, maybe thrown into the water. And also, if they're still not going to leave the shore, you may have to put on your waders and then get them wet and get them excited to maybe stimulate that prey drive. I think one of the most important things for the puppy, from what I can see, is the puppy needs to be assured that the drop-off isn't too steep. The dogs need to know how to get out of the water and be comfortable with it. And if it's a routine and they do it once, twice, maybe the third weekend, they should get pretty comfortable and begin to enjoy it.
Awesome. Anita?
Yes.
What are your thoughts about water and approaching the NA test from a water perspective?
Yeah, I think everything that Becca and Kevin said, it's totally true. You have to work with the dog. Sometimes dogs are really motivated and other ones aren't, and you have to build up that desire. You have to build up that confidence in them. If they have no confidence, they're going to shut down and your day is done. So you've got to make it fun for them. Not everybody has access to water in their backyard. Some people do. I had a lot of access to shallow ponds and everything in Arizona. I don't here. So like I said, what I use, I'll start with a crate and let the puppies get in and out. It's hot now. Let's get in the water and play and throw toys in there. That's a good way to start puppies. Then when you go to I've seen this at a test many times. People will tell you, my dog swims in the backyard in the pool all the time. Then they go down to a pond. They don't know what to do. It's vast. There's cover. There's up there. It scares them. There's people around and it kind of freaks dogs out. I've been through it. I've had dogs that just shut down on me in the water. Okay, what happened? It just happens. Okay, so you do what you have to do. And different places, multiple places, do if you can. I know at Prado they have different ponds and they have nice little areas that are shallow. It'd be fun maybe even to take another dog down with you that they're used to, and that dog likes to swim, so let the other dog go out and the puppy's going to follow and build up that confidence. Good, couple of good things to do with them. You get too many people and too many dogs around, then they get crazy and they start chasing each other up and down the shore. But maybe one other family dog. I see Becca. Yeah. So
good stuff. Well, hey, we've got a couple of good questions. I mean, Daniel and I really want to get through the different portions of the test, but part of this is the interaction with the different groups. So I'll throw this one up as a free throw that's out there. Zach asked a really good question, and we're going to follow that up with another one from an unknown caller. But Zach May wants to know, what is the earliest you recommend snake avoidance training? Anita, having worked with Grand Canyon and SoCal that's out there, and then Becca, you're a hunter as well. And Kevin's an aspiring hunter. Actually, Kevin is an accomplished hunter coming through. But when's the earliest you recommend snake avoidance training? We'll open that up to any of the three of you. Now everybody's going to be.
Basically, yeah. I'd say that, I mean, you're not going to take your dog out at 4 months old and hunt it. So I think that's a little young. I think 6 to 8 months is probably a good time to work on that. So,
Becca, any?
I think some of the dog snake break people won't touch a dog until they're at least 6 months old. So I don't know what you guys have down there.
Becca, any thoughts?
I mean, snake breaking is not only for the hunter, as you know, because of where some of us live, we have snakes in our backyard. So I think it should be a little bit circumstantial to where you live. Obviously, if you have snakes in your yard, it's a life or death decision, and it's probably better to do it. Obviously, if your dog is on the softer side, I personally would not snake break under 9 to 12 months old. But again, if I lived in a rattlesnake infested area, I would probably just go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Hey,
Kevin, I'm going to throw a different one at you, Kevin. You're not in snake country at the beach, but you're definitely in a fun playground area. Well, I don't know. There could be snakes at the beach, but Kevin, you're definitely in an area that's a lot of fun to play in. One of the questions that came out was how do you teach recall?
Recall. As a puppy, what I tried to do with all the dogs before they left the house and while they're young is try to train them on the whistle. So we transition from name and call, and I use treats with a clicker. So it's when the dog comes back, we transition from come, yell the dog's name, and whatever type of whistle you have to get the dog to come to you. And generally, my wife and I will ping pong the dog back and forth, but we both have treats to encourage the dog and come racing back. We do that probably just a couple times, 3 times a week. Make it fun, make it serious, but don't overdo it because the dog, you try not to ping pong the dog back and forth too much. And I generally won't do that ever in the field unless there's something that's maybe dangerous.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask this. Go ahead, Pete. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go, bro.
I wanted to ask the three of you, just each take a turn. As you guys have all had success and a lot of experience in this field. What is the one thing you think is overlooked the most in NA testing by new handlers themselves? You feel there's another one. They did the same thing that I always see. What do you think is the one thing you guys see always missed, whether training or as a handler, the handler themselves?
Becca?
Sorry, I didn't hear that part.
Sure. So what is the one area when it comes to the NA portion you feel handlers themselves miss or don't do enough training for, whether being with the dog and or themselves as a trainer? What's the one thing you always see other people miss at?
I think there's actually probably 2 areas that I see, and it's for myself as well as I continue to do more dogs. So I think one of the biggest area opportunities is a dog's cooperation in the field, cooperation on tracking, cooperation in the water. And you get dinged on that the more you talk. So I'm a talker. And so that goes against your cooperation score. And then the other part is tracking. So, you're teaching your puppies how to point, you're teaching your puppies how to air scent, and then you're going to ask your puppy to track. Your puppy has to know the difference because you will get dinged if your puppy is hunting. It has to track.
Now, Daniel, Melody brings up a really good point that I was going to take over to Anita. And Anita, one of the comments out of Southern Cal is that the challenge, or Melody says, the challenge I found with the NA was tracking. When we train, there's a strong scent that we use, whether it's hot dogs or birds. But in the test, there's just the slightest scent of a pheasant walking. How do you prepare for such a small or a slight scent?
Well, like she said, you have to start these dogs very young. You have to start with dead scent on the ground, and you need to use a consistent word, whether it's track or dead bird or whatever. You have to do that. And I've seen a lot of people go out and they're ready for this tracking part of the test, and the dog is running around on the leash, a real long leash, and people tend to let go of their puppies too soon for the track. Okay,
point.
They do.
Great point.
Don't let go too soon, and the judges are not going to tell you, hey, you have to let the dog go now. Just let it go. They're not going to tell you that. Okay. Tracking, pretty much, I have seen people do different kinds of tracking. One of the best ways I've seen, and Tim Clark came to Arizona for a training seminar, and I saw him do this, and it was like, wow, this is really cool. And he will take a dead bird and drag it for a young dog, and he'll do that a couple of times, and then he'll start with a live pheasant and let a live pheasant, run, and let the dog watch the bird run until it disappears, and then let the dog go in on the check cord. Those kind of things we practice. We will even take a harness during practice, put a harness on the pheasant, and put 2 10-foot leashes on each side, and have somebody walk the pheasant out, so we don't have our foot scent down there. Like when you're walking the bird out or dragging it. Have you guys ever done that?
No, I love hearing about this.
It's different.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, he did that for us, and it was like, wow, this is cool. It takes 2 people to do this.
Okay.
You got your dog over there, and you got somebody walking that pheasant out, and then you walk it to the end of the track, and you leave a dead bird there, pick up the live pheasant, take it back. Now you've saved a pheasant, but the dog is still getting the foot scent of the bird. That kind of stuff works really well with tracking, and really calm the dog down. Yeah.
This is absolutely the reason why I like doing things like this. I've never heard that, but it totally makes so much more sense.
And again, too, these people have to use a completely different word than field work, releasing their dog. That tracking, that dog has to associate that task with a particular word. I use the word track. That's all. Okay. So
I like, yeah.
seems to work pretty good with the dogs. And keeping the dog calm during the track too.
Good stuff. Daniel?
So I actually had some more questions about that. So are you letting the puppy actually watch as you guys are taking that pheasant down on the check cord or 2 check cords the whole time, or is it out of sight?
Well, if I'm starting out and I have a puppy that has never done this before, then yes, we let them watch it. But if we've done it a few times, the dog's got it down, then no, we don't let him watch. We just walk the bird out, leave that bird, then come back, and then check cord the puppy down the trail and let it work it out. And it's really amazing how they pick it up really quick.
So actually, I'm going to spin off of that for a quick sec. And we're talking a lot. We've talked about water. We've talked about tracking there. Kevin, I'm going to take it back to you. You've got a unique situation where you've got, just a tier of family of dogs. You've got Moxie and Mika, and now the newest one. But Kev, my question is, Anita's talking about having the dog watch what's going on. How much do you bring in your other dogs for training? Do you find that the older ones teach the younger one?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, it definitely, from the puppy, like Anita said, that it definitely helps the little ones stretch a little bit as those dogs, because they're more confident and they're going to run out. And since they're part of their pack, that definitely helps. For osmosis, I don't know. I would refer to her. I don't have enough experience in that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Now, I purposely wanted to, it gave me an opportunity to talk to you and get you on cam. Kevin, I think out of everybody in Southern California, that you seem to have the most fun with tracking. I've seen you do 350, 400 yards tracking. What's been your approach to the track?
I think with that dog, Moxie, that likes to track, I think it's just, I made it super fun for her. And I made it a giant party when she came back, and I just kept making it longer and a little more difficult. And now she'll track long ways. And she comes back, and it's a big party, and she puts it in my hand, and she's happy. That's her.
Explain a little bit. When you say big party, I know what you mean. I do it now with my kids. But what is that? What is that? I'm not asking you to do the noise, but what does that mean?
Sometimes I will. She'll jump. She'll put it in my hands, and then she'll jump on my chest, but and stand up, and then I'll pick her up off the ground and bounce her up and down and tell her what a good girl she was, and maybe I'll even give her a little food.
Okay.
And then if it's a long track and if she was perfect, I've been told by you and my other mentors that if it's a good one, we're done. Dog goes back in the box, and we'll play another game sometime later.
Kevin, it's one of my absolute joys out there. Becca, I actually, Becca, every time I come up, it seems like you're coming out of the water at Prado, but I know you do quite a bit of tracking there. I don't know what it is. It's usually, Becca's got a set of waders on and she's coming out of the water at Prado. But talk to me about the approach for tracking with you.
Very similar to how Anita approaches it. We let the puppies observe us dragging we start with a dead pheasant, frozen pheasant, and we let the puppies watch. And then after the puppies watch us drag it, we use a check cord and we let the puppy go out. Another approach that we do is something that I learned with Ruth Wise, and that is to have somebody drag the pheasant up ahead of the puppy and let the puppy follow nose to the ground. So your check cord is taut and their nose is to the ground about, I'd say 8 to 12 inches from the pheasant, learning to keep its nose to the ground to follow that scent.
Awesome.
And after a couple of times of that, they really understand what they're supposed to be doing.
So, one of the questions that came back was desire and range, Becca, out of the chat box. What's the best way to build desire and range? And it's amazing. We've just recently been into a couple of different examples on training. Actually, with Flash, we had this. Not that Flash is an NA dog, but we got to see. He'd be a really cute NA dog. But I think the question for the panel, we'll start with Becca, is, how do you build desire and range? And I actually think a lot of that comes from tracking. But how do you go about that?
I think for myself, it's all about getting the puppies out in the fields, letting them run, take the restraints off the dogs. It's not a race to get a check cord on them. It's not a race to get a shock collar on them. Get them confident, get them out in the field, let them run with other dogs that it's a safe environment, and let them get out there. You don't need to continue to call them back. You don't need to overmanage these puppies. Let them build their confidence, because then you could put the reins on them later and pull back.
I like that. What about you, Anita?
That's pretty much what she said. It's all fun stuff out there. I'll put my young dogs out with an older, more experienced dog. They tend to follow them around. If I call them in, the pup's going to follow in, and make it all fun stuff. And then I'll take the pup out by itself. I'm going to tell you a little incident that happened to me many years ago. Somebody brought a dog to me and said they want to get NA test done on the dog. And I said, okay. The dog had no exposure to birds or anything. And I thought, well, the first thing to do is head out to the field and see what this dog's going to be like in the field. So I took it out. That dog was 4 feet in front of me, walking circles around. This dog, no clue as to what to do. And I had to be very patient. And I said, I'm just going to keep bringing the dog out day after day after day. And I'm going to tell you, within about 3 months, the dog was hunting the field. So you might get a dog that's a little shy and you get disappointed. You don't know what to do with it. These are the kind of things you have to do. You just have to go out with these dogs, let them have fun, no pressure on them, and maybe even let them follow another experienced dog around. So
good stuff. Hey, Taylor Miller's joining us. Kevin, we're going to have you round out that question, just talking about building desire and range. I don't think we have any issues at all, Kevin, with you building desire and range. But why don't you tell us a little bit about this?
To get a puppy to go out and range, well, I've learned from people that I've trained with and my mentors that one thing that I'm guilty of, talking too much while the puppy's out there and trying to dictate and shed too much obedience on them. So I've in my toolbox, I prescribe to the duct tape formula, and I try to get my dogs out in range and not say too much, and try to put them in a safe environment, and possibly put a bird out as far as you think the puppy can range, and without too much competition, and just let them be puppies. There's no pointing, there's no nothing. It's just hopefully they can expand, and if they bump a bird and the dog runs down a half a mile chasing it, I'm ecstatic, because I know the dog will come back.
It was Jeff Ryan, and for those of us on the AKC side, we've seen Jeff as a judge, and Jeff pulled me aside after one of my first test moments and said, "There's a perfect tool that you need." And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Get a pen out." He said, "I want you to write this down." And all right, I'm leaning in. What's this miraculous tool that's going to solve all of my problems? That's there. And he said, he said, "Do you get about $5 on you?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'd like you to go to the hardware store." And he said, "I want you to get a big roll of duct tape." And I'm thinking, God, this is going to be really hard for the dog. And he says, rip out a good long strip and then put that over your mouth. And he said, never take it off again. So I apparently should have followed his advice. But yeah, it's amazing. And we saw that this weekend that's out there. So here's kind of the magic of where we're at. We've got about 15 minutes left in the call. We've got some great folks that are out. We've talked about the water. We've talked about the tracking. I think the upland, we've kind of covered as well. That's out. But we're going to come back to the group questions. I want to talk just for a split second. We've got 3 very different breeders that are out there. And Becca, you've been just an inspiration. You've got Weimaraners that are not known, as well for hunting, and you've really single-handedly changed that. How many different dogs have you run through in the last 3 years in the NA test?
We've ran 17 in the last 2 years.
I mean, that's a huge commitment as a breeder, as a custodian of the breed and things like that. What are some of the unique challenges from a Weim perspective, or what's the secret sauce that stood out for you?
I think the biggest thing is not accepting these dogs to be couch ornaments. These are hunting dogs. They are sporting dogs. I also own German short hair pointers. They're just as good as the short hairs. And as a breeder, it is my job to make sure that these dogs are being represented in that way. And I think many breeders have gotten away from that. Of course, I show my dogs as well.
Yep.
So that's very important to us. I think the conformation is a big aspect to the field. So I think by being a good mentor, I think about being a good support. If we have local families that are getting our dogs, come train with us. Come get out here. Let's make it easy. Let's make it fun. NAVHDA is a great organization for new people. You guys host monthly trainings that don't charge these new people anything. And they're very accepting to help. And I just think not enough people know about it.
Well, you're doing a good job of bringing in some exposure. You do. Oh, Ty's going to present for us. Hi, Ty.
Hi, Ty.
So you've done a really good job. And I honestly, Becca, I didn't know much about the breed, outside of the calendars and the pictures. And I listened to a podcast just talking about bringing the hunt side out. And I'm like, wait, no, I know this breed. This is the breed that Becca's out working with all the time. And it's a great thing to see what you're doing. Kevin, you came at this from a different perspective. When you had your litter, you came with very specific requirements. Can you talk a little bit about those requirements?
Well, I was just, when we were searching for the suitable fella, I referred to my mentors, Susan Mully being one. She was the biggest impact that we had on our litter, and she really helped us, guide us to a dog that she thought would be very compatible with our bitch, and we were trying to put more hunt and strong conformation into the litter, also with dogs that are very biddable, and she guided us all the way through. So I can't say enough of what she's done for me and my wife. I mean, we only have one litter on the ground, so you know, I don't have the experience like Anita or Rebecca. So I have to refer back to others for help.
You came though with some very specific requirements, Kevin. I don't know a lot of breeders that require their the new puppy owners to have a set of waders and to have a blank.
Well, that's different.
See,
I was, you know, I got lucky, and I told them that, you know, we bred this dog, and we flew the bitch back to Pennsylvania to breed, and so we took many applications, and we finally settled on the 6, and part of the agreement was, well, you're getting a dog that we put a lot of time and energy. We'd like for you to hunt, and so I coursed all my puppy owners to join NAVHDA and also run in the AKC events. So out of the 6, we have 4 that have junior hunt titles, and also 4 NA titles. 2 of the dogs from the litter now have master hunt titles as well, and 1 has a UT3. So it's been a good ride, and it's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot from all people coming to me. It's been quite an experience.
Anita, just talking about the experience that Kevin's touching on, you have a really unique perspective in the fact that, and I'm sorry, Daniel, I'm taking a lot of questions here, but Anita, you've got a really unique perspective. You've trained with SoCal, and I think you're still a member. You've trained with Grand Canyon. You're training right now with Chesapeake Bay. It's out there. You've got experience with Florida at SoCal. What? I'm trying to formulate the question. I guess the big thing is, what stood out on the NA test for you? What, if there's one single thing that stood out, or one different approach that you've seen that's a commonality? That's, I guess, where I'm trying to go with this. What's been the commonality from an NA testing perspective? What's the one thing that all 3 chapters are getting right?
I think it's just the camaraderie, that people want to help each other. They all want the same thing we want. You know, we want help. We want someone to work with us and work with our dogs. And it's nice that they're there, because the way that the SoCal chapter might train, they might have special ways of doing things. Grand Canyon might have something you've never seen before. So trying all these different chapters, I love going to the different chapters, even out here. I've been to a couple of them. One of them I won't go back to again, because they are very I won't mention what it's like. Yeah.
So
it's
but
that's what draws people to this.
Yeah.
You know, get them to come in. And
on the positive side, in the last year, have you seen something that just really stood out? I love the pheasant example for tracking. Has there been something from a chapter that stood out where you're like, wow, that's completely different than what I've been exposed to?
Yeah, the tracking part was very, very unique. That was really exciting to see that, and it really does work. That was just the one chapter, and that was a training seminar. And been to the chapters, and sometimes they split off and they just do different things. You know, yeah. I know when I first started the Grand Canyon chapter, we had a couple come out. They asked for help, and so I was working with them, and they kept telling me, well, this is how so-and-so does it, and that's how so-and-so does it. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, I kind of got to the point where if you want my help, I'll help you. But if you don't and you need help from that other person, then go. But that was a long time ago. But nowadays, it's been like everybody really wants to help everybody. You know, they're all there to show them different ways to do things. I don't know. Just, yeah.
It's the better part of NAVHDA. It truly is.
Yeah.
I think we've all kind of come into that place.
Right. That's your AKC hunt test. Probably a lot of fun for these people, but they're not going to experience the different portions of what they can do. You know, you go to an AKC hunt test, and you've got one thing. The dogs are running around in the field. They're having fun out there. Bang, bang, shooting the gun. But when you go to NAVHDA, you've got your water, your tracking, your field work. These people get a whole day of fun. with their dogs.
Yeah.
The only down draw is when there's a lot of people there, then it's a lot of standing around and waiting your turn. That's the down draw of it. So if you have a lot of help and you can split up, which we've done at the Grand Canyon chapter, someone goes to the water, someone else goes to another field with all tracking, and someone else does field work. So
Daniel?
So we got a couple good questions in the chat. Want to kind of leave this open to the three of you. They're kind of a two-parter. One is, how do you end a, what's the best way to end a training session? And the second question is, how many different species of birds do you introduce your puppy to? Kevin, Becca, Anita, whoever wants to chime in.
Everybody's really polite.
So I think it's really important that every training session you end on a positive note. When we hand out training, it doesn't mean that we're going to be there for an hour. We could be there 5 minutes. If your dog gets it right, you end on a positive note. And then as far as the type of birds you're exposing your dogs to, when my puppies are 4 or 5 weeks old, the first type of bird that they see is a quail. When they've managed a quail to small bird, they're confident, then they can, move on to, a pigeon with maybe clipped wings. It's really important that you build the confidence in your dog so they can manage the strength of the bird.
I like that. Kevin?
Well, I agree with Rebecca 100%. That's my exact formula.
Yeah.
I mean, I generally, I don't have access to that many, but pheasants I generally stay away from for a while. And the big bird for the puppies is the chucker. But pheasants maybe sometime a little later.
Right. Anything to add, Anita?
nope, I agree 100% with that whole thing.
So, Daniel, no joke. At Singasino, yesterday afternoon, there was a guy with a goose and a 2-year-old lab. I'm like, that's not going to go well. That's not going to go well. The goose was as big as this lab, and I'm like,
poor dog.
I'm happy to give you two or three of my pigeons, with no problem. So, look, we've got 5 minutes left to go through. I would love to hear from each of you just the one thing that's impressed you the most about the NA test, something that you weren't expecting to happen or learn, just a unique, actually, I'll phrase it this way. Have any of you had a unique experience in the NA test, and how did you get around that, or what did you do to work through that out there? And if it's not the NA test, how about something from a training perspective, just something unique, something you just hadn't planned, something. Kevin and I have had birds. We actually had hawks coming. At one point, we had hawks coming in and grabbing our live pigeons out of the air before we could shoot them. But have you had something unique, and what did that look like, and how did you train around it?
Well, my worst experience was at Prado.
Okay.
It was, I believe it was the last time I was there. And I had a dog that got into some cactus in the field. Oh yeah, she just shut down, and judges says you want to, go ahead and, get her some water, get her calm down. She just fiddled around in front of me back and forth, and I go like, well, I don't know what to do with her now because she got into that cactus. I said, nope, let's just keep walking. Let's just keep going. We kept going. She did her field work. And the scariest part was when they did the track. Now, mind you, this particular dog was like a string was attached to its nose on the ground, right to the bird, every time. Live pheasants, every time. I go, she's going to smoke this. Turned her loose for the test. And judges said the bird went straight ahead. And I let her sniff around a little bit. She had her nose down, cut her loose, and I knew she was right on it. And about 15 feet in front of me, I looked up, and there was a big patch of cactus. That bird went right through it.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my heart's pounding. I'm going, she's not going to do it. She got to the edge of that cactus, turned around, came back, sniffed around on the ground. I was like, Oh, please go. The heart's going crazy, and I just know this dog can do it. She's not going to go through that cactus. Well, guess what? She had that desire to get that bird, and she turned around, headed straight for it, went right through it, came back with the bird in her mouth, and went around the cactus.
Amazing.
That was probably the most amazing thing that I've ever seen in all the years I've trained. That I just knew this dog wasn't going to do it, but she did. She pushed. Because she had that drive and that desire to get that bird. That was really an exciting moment for me when she performed that task. So
that's great training.
I've seen really odd things happen at the water, and you just have to deal with it. You have to work through it. I've acted like an idiot running up and down the water trying to get the dang dog in the water, and it works. It's the one time you act really stupid. So it works. You do whatever you have to do with these dogs, and they're all different. You know, they don't all train up the same way, and so you have to work with them individually. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Kevin, any unique experiences, Kevin?
Not with my dog, but with another NAVHDA member, Gary Johnson, our friend. He's got a brilliant little short hair by the name of Boogie, and Boogie is a dog that will make you nervous. That dog wants to hunt and likes to run. And Boogie we were at Prado, Anita, by the way. We were down there by the front field, and Gary had always, he wanted a field dog. He wanted a dog that could really range. And so I always teased him and said, "Where's your dog?" And he'd get nervous, like, "Where's the dog?" I said, "This is what you wanted, right? A field dog." But long story short, I saw Boogie from the front field leave that and went into those ponds where the Labrador people train. And Boogie is the only dog I've ever seen jump in the water and was floating, and there was a duck there. And Boogie was floating on top of the water, pointing the duck in about 5 or 6 feet of water. Mm-hmm. And she's a special dog. So that's really exciting to see. And I just said, "Oh my."
Yeah.
Becca, what about you? I'm sure you spent a lot of time in a test or in a training situation. Anything unique, and how did you get through it?
I think the most unique situation was the NA test we ran out in Bridgeport. It wasn't in the premium we'd be running in a cow pasture. And it wasn't in the premium that the farmer was going to flood the cow pasture fields. So we had to run our dogs both for field portion and tracking in about 3 feet of cow poop. And wow. I've never trained my dog to track through cow crap, but that was probably the most challenging obstacle that we got through. I would say maybe one dog that day passed a track with better than a 1. So that was probably the most challenging situation that I've been in. But of course, that's why it's so important to keep training our dogs in different areas every time that we train. We can't train the same areas every time.
No, these are all great topics. So, folks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to wind us down and close out. I wanted to just note that there's a lot of folks. We're talking a lot about Prado. We're talking a lot about some SoCal perspectives. Anita's been absolutely fantastic, but the commonality of having Anita here with us tonight is that she's been with SoCal, she's been with Grand Canyon. We're going to try to do another session with Grand Canyon. One of the topics that we're looking at doing is training etiquette or how to get the most out of a training day. So we'll be reaching out to a handful of different folks. But the big reason why we're doing this is that we've got a lot of great folks in common synergy. A lot of Anita's dogs have run here in Southern California. We have a lot of Garbanita owners that are out, and we wanted to make sure that there was some commonality there. We see you at our test, you guys see us at your tests that are out there, but we just wanted to make you a little bit more comfortable. And then the other part of that was to remind you about the national meeting. This was a big thing to get the national meeting to come out to Southern California. So we're hoping that in January of 2022 that you'll come out. Daniel's got a couple of different housekeeping products, but I definitely want to make sure that we're thanking, both Becca, having Anita has been Absolutely amazing. Anita, I learned a lot from you tonight. And then Kevin, it's always really good to hear your perspective that's out there, but I really want to make sure that the whole audience is using that chat box, and giving a big thank you to our panelists tonight. Daniel's going to take us out with just a couple of housekeeping things. And then if you want to see this again, give us about 24 to 48 hours. We'll have this up on the Facebook page. We'll also have this out on our YouTube channel. That's in the chat box right now, going through. But thank you everybody for coming out, and I'll turn it over to Daniel.
Thanks, Pete. Again, thank you, Anita, Kevin, and Becca for joining us and giving us a wealth of knowledge. On the next test that we have is actually a Prado. It's September 18th, 19th, and 20th. You can find the signups on our Inland Empire page. I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat box if you're not familiar. On the annual meeting, Pete, I'm going to let you chime in. I don't remember where we stand on that.
Annual meeting is going to be January of 2022, and I need to get the actual dates, but just plan on coming out to sunny Southern California. The Grand Canyon's got a ton of sun as well, but plan on coming out. We want to see you. We purposely delayed it a year just so that we could get past some of this COVID nonsense that's going on. But yeah, we'd love to see you at our training day, and then we'd love to hear about at a training day. We'd love to have you at our UT or NA test, and then we'd love to see you at yours. Good stuff. So folks, I think we're going to call it a great night. You know, this has been our 3rd episode of Dog Talk. We're really honored that Grand Canyon would join us. And again, you know, make sure that you see and say thank you to these folks when you see them out in the field. Anita, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, I'm thank you for letting me be on this. It's like, wow, this is really awesome. It's like just like being there, you know.
It's the best part about my day. It's the best and worst part about my day. If you got a bird dog, you have to train. I'm sorry.
I was a member of the SoCal chapter in 1977. I joined, and I was a member of that chapter for a long time. And then I moved to Arizona, still a member of the SoCal chapter. And then we opened our chapter in Arizona, and with that. But then I rejoined the SoCal chapter, and so I think I'm like 3 chapters. This one out here and those 2 there. So seen a lot of different dogs, different breeds, and worked with a lot of different breeds too. And usually it worked out pretty good. A lot of nice people, you know, they're family. So
thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'll surely join again if there's anything else I can help with. You know, like I said, I haven't done anything with my dogs, you guys, in 2 years. You know, started getting rid of my 5-year-old ready for utility, and then COVID happened. So here we are, you know. Now I'm hoping to get started back in the field towards the end of summer. It's too hot here. It's really humid here in the summertime, and hopefully test in the spring. So put me off for another year. That's all right.
Awesome.
So, all right.
Well,
thank you all, and have fun with your training.
Good stuff. Thank you again, everybody. We're going to go ahead and close out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night, everybody.